Thank you everyone for being here for today's 100 Women to Watch conversation, which is titled Unfinished Business, Fulfillment Beyond the Finish Line. So the question of what happens after you make it is one that leaders typically quietly carry, even if they rarely say it out loud. But today we're going to have an out loud conversation to talk about what that looks like and what that means, because we're in a culture that celebrates milestones. We celebrate titles, we celebrate trophies, but rarely do we speak or pause to ask what comes after the applause fades. And what does fulfillment look like when the goals are already met? The boxes are checked, and yet something inside maybe still feels unfinished. So today we're going to invite in an honest conversation, a human conversation about what it means to lead, to live from wholeness outside of the hustle. So we're going to do a little bit of exploration, and our panelists are here to share lived experience and not formulas, okay? We're talking about reflections from women who have achieved, who have built, who have led, and then who have listened inside to what comes next. So if you find yourself nodding or maybe questioning or exhaling today a bit during the conversation, just know that you're not alone. And this space is for leaders who are ready to move into achievement and into alignment. So let's begin. So that we can get introduced. Let's get introduced to everyone with our first question. And that first question is, can you take us to the moment when you realized that you had achieved the thing that you had worked so hard for? And how it felt to you. Maybe it felt how you expected, and maybe it didn't. We can lean into that. So who would like to step to the mic first to talk about their experience?
I'll say something, if I may.
Absolutely.
When becoming a rabbi was my second career, and it took me 10 years between the time that I decided I wanted to do it and the time I was actually ordained. That's the moment at which they say you're a rabbi and introduce you as a rabbi. And I went to what was then a very small school and is now a very big school, the Academy for Jewish Religion, which had rabbis and cantors and teachers from all different movements in Judaism. It was a pluralistic seminary, which was very unusual. This was in the late 1980s. And because it was so small, not only did you do your work, but you also helped in the school administration and figuring things out. It was very collaborative. It was a very interesting experience. And I had helped to create the ordination ceremony. They'd never had anything that was exactly the same for everybody. And so we thought there should be the same for everybody. And I worked with the dean to create it. And it was wonderful, and we were all so excited. And my moment came when it was ordination day, and the rabbi who is most meaningful to you in your journey is asked to ordain you and present you. And ordination has to do with actually the laying on of hands. It's a physical transmission of accomplishment that is said to go back over 3,000 years. Now, there weren't rabbis 3,000 years ago, but that's how things are in religion. The numbers begin to be very plastic and malleable. But the idea that when you become a rabbi, you are serving in this chain of tradition is very important. And so I had asked my dear rabbi, who I had studied with before I even went to rabbinical school, Rabbi Dr. Bernard Slotowitz of blessed memory, to do this with me. And he stood behind me, and there I am, and all my friends and family and classmates and other people's families were there, and I'm on this stage. And he puts his hand on me, on my shoulders. And now this had taken me 10 years to do this. get to this point. And he said to me, Joe, from where I stand, go forward. And he gave me a little push. That's what we had designed. Well, you know how when you late at night you think of how things are going to be, and I thought, oh, this is going to be wonderful. It's so romantic. It's wonderful. In that moment, when he gave me that push, what went through my mind was, oh my God, have I just wasted 10 years of my life? How can, from where he stands, because he was a great rabbi, great standing from a very important rabbinic family, from where he stands, I should go forward. And I had this moment of absolute terror where I felt like the space in front of me was going to open up and swallow me. It was I've never experienced anything so terrifying in my life, because I suddenly felt that chain of tradition and all those links of tradition taking me back to Mount Sinai, if you will. And I'm like, how can I be good enough? How can I meet the standards that he's set and all the great rabbis before? And it was so disorienting that I almost fainted. I mean, it was not what I expected. Luckily, it passed, because the next thing that he did is he walked me over to the front of the stage and introduced me as Rabbi Joe David, and then everything was fine. But it was that one moment of where I had not questioned, from the point that I realized that I was going to become a rabbi, I was going to pursue that. It was absolutely I knew it was who I was, what I was meant to do. And in that moment, it was just, oh, what
Right.
I got myself into. So that's my story about
Incredible. Thank you, Rabbi Joe. Because what I'm getting from what it is that you just said is that there was a bit of a surprise, because sometimes we expect when we achieve a certain milestone, like there's confetti, there's balloons, there's a celebration, but we don't figure in that we're stepping through a threshold into a newer version of self, and that might be a little scary as well, right?
it. Yes.
Right. So thank you for, sharing the authenticity and the realness of that moment for you as you were achieving something massive, and also you felt that shift in your own unique way.
Yeah.
Awesome. Audrey, would you be so kind as to share next? Maybe there is a moment, in which you experienced something similar, and maybe it was what you expected, maybe it wasn't. Maybe there's something that surprised you about that moment.
I can be a harsh taskmaster, and when you sent your questions through, I thought, oh my gosh, this is a lot like being in therapy, because these are the private moments that we don't talk about. As a publicist, you're expected to, meet everyone's goal, meet everyone's expectation, and just, brush it off. Like, yeah, I've booked Oprah back in the day. I have had my clients on late night television, which is a coup. Um, but I think what I'm really great at is growing brands to get people to that point. So that's another thing in and of itself, because when you've worked so very, very hard to get a client to a certain place, that can be like, it can be a moment of, oh, brushing your shoulders off, like I told you we would get here. um but I think in hindsight, it's really about the journey and about control, right? Because um, so much of the work that we do can be hard won. Media hits, or getting a client to get in the room can be, so much work, and it's subjective, and it's also subject to emotion, right? Clients can have attachments to media outlets. My mother read Good Housekeeping, It was always on our coffee table, or I had a feature in the New York Times and I made the bestsellers list. So those expectations are there for you to meet. But media changes, its value changes, and the effect on campaigns can change as well. So I was just talking to my husband this morning, and something great happened, and I said, you know what? As soon as I'm done with everything that I have to do today, I'm going to go back to the middle. And he said, why? He said, yeah, right. Not too high, not too low, in the middle. And then, being the great man that he is, he goes, you know, that's what they do in sports. When they win championships or medals, they celebrate that night, and then the next day it's back to work. So I think for me, it's about staying in the middle. Like, yay, I'm happy that I've achieved that goal. But the goal in and of itself cannot be the thing. That's what I've learned, because if you make it the thing, you might get it. Your client's happy, you got it. And then it's like, okay, off to the next thing. Or you can get it and the client maybe isn't satisfied, because maybe in the end, that's really not the thing that's going to make their campaign or their product take off. So everyone has expectations. And I think it's like happiness. Happiness is an inside job. Satisfaction is an inside job. And I have to say that I'm guilty. And that's why this is a little bit like therapy. When I read the questions, I thought, oh gosh, who am I going to pay? I got to pay my therapist, like, answer these questions with her. But it's a real thing.
Yeah. I love what you're saying about, well, one, that you're willing to even entertain the question, right? Thank you so much for going there. I acknowledge you for that. And what you're saying about how, like, you got to get up and go to work the next day too. Like, that's huge. In some communities, they talk about, like, chopping wood and carrying water. Like, these are the things that you need to do each day, in and out, whether you're achieving your milestones or not. So that resonated deeply. Thank you, Audra.
We're in this together, sister.
Oh, yes. Anne Marie, thank you so much for being here. And there's a lot of, it's so funny that we said chop wood, carry water, because you were in the middle of the forest, owning a business and helping people and just being who it is that you are at one point in time. Can you share with us a bit about the evolution of who it is that you've been as a business owner and what it looked like every time you reached that? Because you've done it multiple times. You made it, and then you did it again, and you made it again. So what does that look like for you?
Well, first, you were mentioning, the question was the moment. And I think it's actually a series of moments. I didn't have a direct path like Rabbi Joe did. She was set out for 10 years to do that. There was many things I've done in 10 years. And I came from a family that I stepped into the traditional role of a mother. My cousin actually was on fellowship in Harvard, so she was getting paid to go to Harvard, and she saw me as this great success. And here I was, an at-home mother with 3 children, a daycare, and I started my husband's plumbing company. And I said, well, how do you rate my success? Is it the success of my husband or the success of my children that determines my own merit? So that was one thing I was toying with. But also, as being a mother, you're looking at their milestones. And so it was always this projection of what was yet to come. And I found myself living my life as a destination. When they hit this age, when they hit this grade, when we hit this amount in the bank account, when. And I don't know if, especially Rabbi Joe would be familiar with the author, who's also a rabbi, Harold Kushner, who his first book was When Bad Things Happen to Good People. He has other several good books that are short and concise. And this one was called When All You've Ever Wanted Isn't Enough. And I read that book when I was going into the forest, which is another story. We'll come back to that in a moment. But when you live your life as a destination and you get there, wherever there happens to be, what is next? And the example he used, I will never forget the vividness of this. I think it's a Yiddish quote or something that says, to a worm in horseradish, the world is only horseradish. Right? So if you're in a jar of horseradish, that is all you're ever going to see in every direction you turn, and there is no destination. You do not see a beginning and an end in a jar of horseradish. It's just the same all the time. And then that's not how I live my life. As you know, I do not do the same thing all the time. So yes, I went into the middle of the national forest with 3 teenagers, 7, 10, and 12, to live off grid on 7 acres originally, with campgrounds, off grid, meaning we had no telephone. We generated our own electricity, and all of our water was pumped from a well. We had the only public shower on the mountain in the wilderness of California, and we were the only emergency services without a telephone. But I saved people's lives there. People came to me. I was the only thing that could save their life up there, while homeschooling 2 children and living with bears, burglars, and belligerents. That created an aspect of me I didn't know existed. It always existed. It just needed to be cracked open and brought into that. And there were a lot of moments in that time, right? But here I am now, New Year's just upon me, starting an entirely new chapter of my life. My family is behind me. My future is in front of me. And I'm in my early 60s. And what I want to do with what my next endeavor is to be an inspiration to other women who maybe have dedicated their lives to others up to this point, perhaps foregoing their own career and vocation to serve a family like I have, to see that there's merit in that. But when we began, before being married, closer to our birth, our teen years, we were young women with dreams, goals, and aspirations of our own. And we were not somebody else's pronoun. We weren't her mother or his wife. We were individuals. And then we get lost. It gets blurred along the way. And then that success is like, are you successful because your child got into a good college and they got a good job? Did you fulfill your own goals that you had as a child before all these other things happened? And there's merit in all of these things, right? None of it. A woman's job, that is funny just saying that out loud, because I imagine with everybody here on this panel or everybody listening, how many hats you wear. How many hats you wear as a woman, right? And how many moments are there that define you throughout your lifetime? I one time was going to put a want ad just for the fun of it about trying to get somebody to apply to be a mom and say it's 24 hours a day. The benefits are not good. You will be on call 24 hours a day to stay up at night and care for other people. You will have to be Florence Nightingale. You're going to have to be the banker, the baker, the banker, the butcher, the nurse, all of it. And I don't think that anybody would really sign up if you put it into words like that. But it's those moments that we speak about here, and there's just too many to mention, that make it all worthwhile, right? But the main thing is, I think it's Hans Christian Andersen that writes the story about the tortoise and the hare. They both finish at the same time, right? And the hare is exhausted and cannot enjoy the celebration when they reach the same finish line. And that's who I was. Type A personality, going as fast as I can, always looking ahead. And now that I'm looking at the journey, I have time to look back about what I did not notice as being my accomplishments, did not noticing going so quickly to the next success and the next. When you have a perfectionist parent, when you reach that end goal, you just push it out farther and you create a new end goal and you skip the fanfare. And so I'm just here to remind myself, especially, and remind each of us to don't forget the fanfare. Don't forget to celebrate yourself. And although we always have that one turning point, look for more, because that's where all the gold is. And where there's gold, there's sparkle. And that's where we live, in the sparkle of it all. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you're speaking into this, the virtual background that I have here, to remind me that I was listening to an entrepreneur. They were speaking about when it is that they made their first $1 million. And they literally said, hey, I thought that somebody was going to be waiting there, like with confetti, with balloons, and, with all of the things. And what this background reminds me of is that I get to do that for myself, right? Maybe I have a milestone that I'm working towards, and I can throw myself a party. I can celebrate or go out or take a day off or, meet with friends. Like I don't have to wait for someone else to do it for me. So that's there too. Did you want to add something in?
I did, because you have to watch what you say, right? And actually what happened was I saw an ad, somebody was selling a campground. I said, who owns a campground? 12 years later, it was me. But my bar, I would give out these wisdom. I'm just famous for my wisdom, and it just comes through me, not to me. And I said, make your first $1 million and lose it, because otherwise it will own you and you will not own it. And then what did I do? I lost $1 million. Okay. But a bit more than that. And again, I want to just remind people that it's about resilience. Get up. Just get up. Like I tell people, life is like boxing. It's a boxing match. I'm a coach. I stand in the corner. I'm not running up and down the court telling you to make a point, right? I'm in the corner and I'm train people to live their life. And so we fall down, but you have a 10 count. You don't have to get up right away. And so we need to know that we can take longer than the moment. And yeah, we do get knocked down in life. And yeah, you do lose the money. And yeah, you do get up. And I did not mention that I'm actually building a company now that will far exceed what I've ever lost. But it's what I gained in that. You got to flip the coin, what's on the other side, right? And that is the lessons that I learned through living my life. Because I've got a whole new company, Baked Snacks, which is coming out. I've been working on, so that's a whole nother story. Thanks.
Yes. And it's been an honor to witness.
What you said about doing something for yourself I think is so important, because as women, we are socialized from a very young age to be the one often who is responsible for all the feelings in the family, especially the feelings of our parents, right? That's what getting A's is about. It's not about your accomplishment. It's about having something your parents can brag about. It's when we start dating, that's all about attracting somebody, not because of who we are, but who perhaps we think that they should like. And when we get married, then and have children, it's all about supporting our children, our husband or wife, or our spouse. And I was married at 19, and I was divorced and a single mother by 21. And my parents were helpful in that they agreed to help me raise my child. But the deal was that I needed to go out and work, because my son's father was not interested in supporting us or helping to support us. So I was a college dropout. I left college in the second semester of my freshman year. And I had to make money. I became the man. In my little family structure of me and my son, I was the one who had to supply the income, and I didn't have a degree and I didn't have much experience. But it was all about, I had a vision of my life that for the next 25 years or so, my life was going to be about supporting my son and taking care of us. It was not about anything that I wanted to do. I had other dreams for myself when I went to college, none of which was supported by my family, who wanted me to be an English teacher. And there's nothing wrong with being an English teacher, but I had more ambitions for myself than that. We're talking about, I'm going to be 77. So we're talking about the late 60s. Now, I grew up in the 50s and 60s when things like, I married my son's father because in 1968, to have a child and not be married in the Jewish community, you had two choices. You either went away somewhere and had the baby and gave it up for adoption, or you got the man to marry you. I couldn't imagine. Abortions were illegal. I knew someone who had an abortion. I knew how to go in the underground to get it. I couldn't do it. My roommate in college had an abortion, an illegal abortion. It destroyed her. It destroyed her whole life, because I caught up with her recently and she just never got to put it together. It was a terrible thing. But I didn't think I could do that. I didn't think I could. It wasn't about the abortion. It was about giving up the baby, and I couldn't quite get myself there to think, I could just wipe it away and start. I didn't think I could do that. And so I married this man who I knew, it wasn't like it was a one night stand or anything like that. But I married him with the idea at 19 that if it didn't work out, I could divorce him. That's a terrible thing for a young woman to have to think and have to decide about marriage. And I didn't tell my parents. I never discussed this with them. I just did it, and they kind of accepted that at 19, of course I can get married. The person I married was a perfectly acceptable choice in there. He was Jewish. He was the son of people they knew. He was older. He was going to have his doctorate in a couple of months. It was not a terrible misalliance. But for me, it meant I dropped out of college. I put everything on hold to have the baby, to keep house for him. Nothing that was, I wanted to go into the music business. I was a musician. And I just decided, this is how it has to be. No one is going to help me, which is a very radical thing for women, for young women to think about. Because and accept, especially at such a young age. Now I have nieces, I have grandchildren who were in their late 20s. So I've seen several generations go through that period of life when they're 19 and 20, and it looks like nothing that I know, nothing that relates to my own personal experience. But the thing having that experience, and I divorced him at 21 when I could. I knew the day that I thought about killing him, my husband, was the day that I realized I had to get out of the marriage, and I was 20. I knew this was a bad choice. I knew that killing him was the worst choice than whatever else I had to do to get out of the marriage. But on the other hand, these decisions that I made at this very early age put me on a track I was committed to raising my son and giving him the best life that I could, which meant that my decisions had to be about him rather than what I wanted. But it also taught me to be resilient. And you talk about picking yourself up, right? I had to pick myself up. I had to figure out how to put my life together that I could tolerate. And I had a very good life. My first 10 years I was in advertising. I built a multi-million-dollar ad agency. And I didn't have anybody giving me money or helping me. That was me. And when I decided to become a a rabbi to go to rabbinical school, that was the first time that I ever felt that that I was going to do something that was for me. We were broke. We had been through two bank. My husband and I ended up getting remarried to a man I knew from when I was 13. We've been married for over almost 46 years.
Wow.
Has a very happy, and he's supportive of anything I do. He's wonderful in that way. But I thought, can I do this for myself? And that's so important, and Marie, about what you said. Can I do this for myself? Claiming that right for yourself, no matter how scary it was terrifying, because my parents, as much as they didn't support me in other ways, especially didn't support my rabbinic aspirations, because this was in the early 1980s, they had just been ordaining women for about 7 years, 8 years. There weren't a lot. Women don't look like me. Rabbis don't look like me, especially then. Now they do. Now there are lots of women rabbis, but then there was one, there was two, and although they weren't religious, they didn't think it was something a woman should do. Yeah.
Understood.
And
you did it.
And I did it. I did it, and I supported. I continued to support Justin. By then, I was married. Neil was very helpful.
Yes.
But believe me, it was not. Wasn't given to me on a silver platter.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I love the conversation that we had behind the scenes about how it is that you worked through that period of time where you did create that ad agency. Yeah. And it's like, wow, just how much, things have changed. And at the same time, how much you have remained in your empowerment in order to continue to inspire people through one career, through another achievement, and through another achievement. So kudos to you, Rabbi Joe, for sharing your story and for inspiring the others who come into contact with your story.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I just want to hop in and say this is a reminder to all women, the tenacity of women, period.
Yes. And
we will find a way to get through whatever comes our way.
And women empowering women is so important. I just want to give a shout out to the great Melanie Sanders, who, if you haven't found her, started something in May called the We Do Not Care Club. And it's she went on the social media and in her car, in the most granular kind of way, and said, I'm going through perimenopause and I do not care anymore about how I look, what the expectations are, that I can't sleep. My husband better not come near me for at least 5 years, all these things. And she now, because she was so authentic, and she spoke her truth, she now has something like over 3 million followers since May. So anything, as we know, social media doesn't usually blow up like that, but it's because she's so authentic, and she has a book out, and she's got a sold out book tour across the country. It's fantastic, and she's fantastic. Please go on Instagram or Facebook and take a look at her, because this has become a worldwide women's empowerment program for women in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, because we're all women who go through the same life cycle changes, and the world thinks that we should pretend nothing is happening. Well, part of empowering women is saying, this is really saying their truth.
I think that's the thing about success is it can come from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It can come from out of the blue. You being authentic and being in a car and sweating to death, having a hot flash and talking about that. But the thing that is the underlying current is being authentic, right? To there's some things that you might want to try that you don't know. That doesn't mean that you're not being authentic. It means that you're aspirational. But how you go about your business, how you apply your skill, that's where the authenticity comes in. You have a question, Kai, that's like, what did success cost you that no one warned you about? And how did you feel? And, I go back to the past, right? Because I'm presenting myself, and maybe you know me, maybe you know my work, maybe you don't. But I think for me, it started in the very beginning, because my first job, Rabbi Joe was talking about wanting to be a musician. My first job was at Motown Records. And I'll never forget my sorority sister, Cynthia Morgan Jenkins, introduced me to a woman, Andrea, who was in the PR department. And that's how I got my first job. I walked in dressed up, smelling like Bulgari, which was really too heavy of a perfume for a young girl at that age, but whatever. And, I took to it, but there was always this underlying in your face, sometimes underlying in your face current of emergency. Everything is an emergency. And you're dealing with, whether at that time it was like Boyz II Men, and Dinah Ross was still there, and then Andre Harrell came in, and everything was a fire. I'll never forget, there was one time it was, a party, and there's a photographer who's very well known. And he brought in the proofs from the night before or last week, and they were on my desk somewhere, and I'm sharing this desk with someone, and I could not find the proofs. Now, these are proofs that, anyone in PR knows. Now we're at an event, we're sending those photographs out at the event, right? You're sending them to the Post, you're sending them to wherever, whether it's like Patrick McMullen or whomever, back in the day took those photos. So, but for some reason they were the next day and they were on the desk, and I could not find them. And he was standing over me and going, where'd you put them? Where'd you put them? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm losing the patient. Like there's a patient on the table right now and I'm losing the patient. Now, we all know no one is going to die over this. But when you work at a company or in an industry where the feeling is everything is urgent, and what you're doing now, there is nothing more important than this moment, that's how we build empathy. That's the ethos of the company and the industry. And then you have people coming out of that with that mindset. That mindset says that your success or whatever you're doing is now. It is now. You either count right now or you don't count at all. Like, we don't care that you want to be a television producer, a film producer, what have you. We are in the now. And for us to break out of that, that's really, talk about a therapy. That's another therapy moment. That's the moment you talk about with your girlfriends when you go, to happy hour for drinks. Have you ever seen people walk into a happy hour after a day of work? Have you seen their faces? Have you noticed that they look like they've been on the Civil War battlefield? Because they have been, I love that you're laughing at jokes, but it's true. Have you looked at their faces? Have you wondered why there's such a high level of dissatisfaction? Because we are told when we're not scoring that hit that what you're doing is really not good enough. Really, that's what you're being told, is it's not good enough. So now what you have to do, my good friend Paige Duncan, who runs the Front Porch Collective, I found a kindred spirit in her. We met and we gelled because we have the same battle scars. And any PR person, or Ben, who runs Urban Magazine, or Mackenzie Dawson, all of the people we work with, they have been on those battlefields, and we either have to be careful of who you share your dreams with. You've heard that, right? Be careful of the advice that you take, and really take a minute to figure out what kind of advice do you want. I'm going to say another name, Deneen Milner, who is one of the few Black women who has her own publishing imprint. She is a success, but the success doesn't end. It's a daily job, and so much of it is internal, but it's also who's in your circle. Who's in your circle and saying, you know what? I know that you just heard from CBS or Today Show and they said no, or they said not right now. But you know what? That could change next week. How many times have, for my fellow publicists, you've started a project and it's not going anywhere, and you start pitching again and you get a media hit and you get another hit and another hit and another hit. So the success is an inside job, and it's also about who you surround yourself with. And also, you're not a surgeon and don't wear Bulgari.
Right.
Perfume. It's too heavy.
1,000%. Thank you. Thank you so
I'd like
much.
to share, it is very important who you surround yourself with. Actually, they say there's two ways I heard the saying. One is you are only as good as the average of the top 5 people in your circle, or there's only so many seats at your table. Like, choose who gets to sit at your table. And I always imagine like being a kid and getting put at the kids' table, but I'm imagining adults in my life who are now at the kids' table, But what happened with me is in 2023, I had a disrupt in relationships of those 5 people. And one person bounced out, and I just replaced it with another person, and I started my company. It was that important. And as we grow, we've got to remember, especially as women, because we are such a cornerstone for other people's lives. We wear so many hats to serve other people, forgetting oftentimes to serve ourselves first. But people will have to be put on the back burner as we go towards success sometimes, when we have to be able to be discerning to know which relationships serve our greater good and which ones don't, without eliminating people. Because I'm a chef, and I just use the example, like, if your mother is not conducive to your goals, you don't just take your mother out of your life, you just put her on the back burner to simmer. We're just not serving mom today, And so I just want to give the grace and that leniency to other people listening to this, to realize that you can't hold on to everything. A rocket, your suitcase can only weigh so much when you get on an airplane, or you simply won't take off. So lighten your load, know what you're carrying, make sure it's vital and important, make sure it's not over 3 ounces, please.
Right?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I'm just so surprised at how fast this time has gone, because we have been sharing some really incredible instances of how it is that we can empower ourselves as we continue to move forward, and just some reminders for the women who are out there who are doing it right now. Audra was talking about how success, it doesn't end. When I had started my career in public relations at an agency almost 15 years ago now, the president of the agency, her name is Marvette Brito, she was telling me about how she believes that people cannot achieve to a level at which they have not been yet exposed. And when I saw the caliber of people that were walking into the office doors, I was surprised. I was like, how are we operating from one day to the next with these people walking in here? Aren't you done? Like, can't you just wrap it up and go like live on an island, for the rest of your life now? And then I got that the standard of excellence continues to rise. And she showed me every day, being in that agency, how that happens and what it is that you do when you're in success, and how it's not a finite singular moment, but that you continue to walk in it. Mm-hmm. And I see that for all of us who are here, and for those of you who are watching and listening, you're part of that too. So I want to thank you all, Audra, Dr. Rabbi Joe, And also Anne-Marie for just sharing where it is that you have been and how it is that you continue to walk and what it is that you've created for yourself and are creating as you move forward. So thank you, everyone. You can find Audra on LinkedIn by searching her name. You can find Anne-Marie at bakedsnacks.com. You can see the spelling of baked snacks in the subtitle there under her name. And Rabbi Joe, everyone can find you at rabbijoedavid.com, right?
Right.
Excellent. And wishing everyone just continued success in this new year. And let's keep the conversation going on camera and off camera. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Appreciate you all. And bye for now.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.